time of year for pumpkin pie. Actually, this is a Long Island cheese squash with a similar taste to pumpkin. I'm going to be making a pie out of this. Instead of using pumpkin puree, I'm going to cut this, take out the pulp and seeds, bake it, and then use this, making the puree from scratch. First step is to preheat your oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit. Wash the outside of your pumpkin. You can take out the stem if you want. I would just dry it off, basic as can be. Then next, I'm just going to cut into it. To make the puree, we're actually going to be cutting it into 4 pieces. But for this part, I'm just going to cut out a hole in the top. Well, actually no. I might as well. Be careful, this is... Don't let kids do this. Oops. Yeah, be very careful. I'm not the best with knives, so I'm getting a little worried here myself. At this point, I would turn it upside down. Actually, yeah, do what I wanted to do in the beginning. Cut out the cut out the stem part in the center, because that's going to get in your way constantly. So just take this. Just throw it away. We don't need that part right there. It doesn't really matter. Now we've got it like that. We can turn it over. Continue the cutting. There we go. Got into it. Now at this point, now that you got your pumpkin open, well, Long Island cheese squash, I like to save the seeds. So get a colander, and this is where your hands can get ooey and gooey. This is where you can let your friends or kids help. Get the seeds, plop them in there, and then later you can rinse them out. And you can bake these and they taste pretty good. Same with regular pumpkins. A good technique to get the stringy pulp out once you've extracted most of the seeds is to just take like a butter knife, run it against the edges, and a fork and scrape off the strings. Now that I've gotten a decent amount of the stringy pulp out, we're going to have to cut this into fourths just to make it a little more manageable while baking. Oops. They don't have to be perfect. And once again, please be careful. I feel like I'm about to cut my finger off or something right now. This would probably go a lot smoother if you had better knives. I hope you have better knives than me. See, I got most of the string out. I mean, it's still a little stringy, but I mean, you can even take that out too. But that's kind of what makes up this Long Island cheese squash anyway. Here's a fun fact. Did you know pumpkins are actually fruit? At least that's what a little carnival thing I went to recently told me. Or not carnival, corn maze. There we go, 4 manageable pieces. Okay, now that we've cut this into manageable pieces and removed the string from this Long Island cheese squash, you're going to need to put them in your oven. You're going to need to put them in your oven, shell side down. And then you're going to bake this for an hour or until it's literally falling apart. Because you want it to be weak, just like a pumpkin puree you normally buy is. Or in this case, I guess a squash puree. So I would check up on that like half an hour. In about 20 minutes, I'm going to start making the pie crust. At this point, we can begin to make the pie crust. When you have about 20 minutes left, I would go for it. You're going to need 1.5 cups flour, but you got to sift it. So put it in your sifter. And then sift in the 1/2 cup. Then you need 1/2 teaspoon of salt. You need the cut in, which means taking a fork or a dough blender and pushing down on the Crisco or shortening until it mixes in with the flour. You need to cut in 1/2 cup, but you do 1/4 cup at a time. You just go back and forth, keep cutting it. You want it to start to clump together. Kind of start to look like cornmeal. Now you cut in the other half, or the other 1/4 cup, and you'll have a total 1/2 cup of shortening in there. And then after you cut this in, it should start to resemble peas, small peas. Now that this is starting to look like little peas in there, if you can tell, what you need to do is you're going to add about 4 to 5 tablespoons of water. But you're going to add one at a time, and just to one portion. And then the area you add it to, you use a fork, toss it around really quick, and it should get gloopy in that area. Then you kind of push that into one area. And you do the same with another. Okay, starting to come together. Now you want to get your surface, lightly flour it, because you're going to put out your dough and roll it out. Try to kind of spread it evenly. Take your rolling pin, roll from the center outward. You want to roll it into a uniform circle, about an 1/8 inch thick, which is pretty thin. Here you preheat your oven to 400 degrees as you work on the pie crust and the pumpkin puree. Now you can take this, roll it good. You can kind of skew it a little if you want. There you go. Take that. Make sure it's pretty kind of loose in there. There's cracking on the edges. Kind of make sure you get it. Once our pumpkin cooks, we can add the batter to this, add the spices to the pumpkin puree we made, pour it in, and we'll have a homemade pumpkin pie. Okay, here comes the tricky part. You gotta be careful to really scrape the pulp off, or the stringy part off, because the whole time my pumpkin has been baking, or cheese squash, it's been dripping and kind of smelling burnt because the liquid will burn. It's at the point now where it's starting to fall apart, so I'm gonna take it, put it in my mixing bowl, and scrape out the good stuff, just ignoring all black. And then I'm going to blend it a little to mash it up. Alright, scraping off about 1.5 cups of that pumpkin wasn't too difficult, except for the fact that pieces of skin and burnt parts kept getting in. So be careful. I got about 1.5 cups, and now I'm going to add my spices and everything that make the batter for the pumpkin pie. Now that you've got your pumpkin puree smashed, you need to add to this 3/4 cup of white sugar. Then you gotta add 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then you can add some nutmeg, cloves, and ginger. Generally you just add about 1/2 teaspoon each. Vary it by how much you like it, how much you don't. A little bit of everything. It's very open-ended. Yeah, mix all that together, be careful. Well, it smells good. Then you gotta add a 6-ounce can of evaporated milk. I had a 12-ounce, so I had to cut it in half. And slowly add that in. Then you gotta do 1 cup of milk. And then 3 lightly beaten eggs. Now pour in your mixture into your crust. Make sure you really heat up your pumpkin all the way, or else it's going to be a little stringy like mine is. And then you want to bake it in your oven for 60 to 70 minutes, or until it comes out solidified. Well, I baked the pumpkin pie, well, Long Island cheese squash pie for like 60 minutes. Turned out alright. I burnt the edges a little. Good luck. I hope you try this.
It looks great and delicious.